good evening and welcome to the Bangalore International Center. Thank you all for being here. I know it's Onam for many of you who are here today. So happy Onam. We're pleased to have with us today Sujatha Kelkar Shetty, author and scientist, who will be speaking on her recent book, 99 Not Out. The book unlocks some secrets to longevity and wellness, which have become so important today with modern life and all its stresses. Sujatha is a biological scientist. She did her PhD in the US and then went on to do postdoctoral research at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda. In the last decade, she has been writing on wellness. And I should add that Sujatha brings a great sense of style and elegance to everything she does. She will be joined today by Jayapriya Vasudevan, who will be the moderator for this evening. Jayapriya has over 20 years of experience in the publishing field. Jayapriya has over 20 years of experience in the publishing field and has curated literary festivals, has founded and still runs her own literary agency. So I think we're in very able hands. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to them. Just a small reminder to please switch off your mobile phones or turn them onto silent mode. Thank you.
So I thought I would start by asking Sujatha to sort of describe her book in a short paragraph, give us an insight sort of line into the book, from which point I'm going to ask her 5 or 6 questions that we've discussed and we think are interesting parts of the book. And we'd love to have you ask questions. So Sujatha, so nice to be here with you, first of all.
Thank you, my dear Jay. She has really been instrumental in making this journey as smooth as it could possibly be. So if you're planning to write a book, I highly recommend you get in touch with her. She's an amazing agent. Yes, so why this book, right? So Voltaire said, good health is something that God has given us. He's written this, and I'm paraphrasing it very poorly. But it's really up to us, he says, to live it well. And that's what this book is about. So 99 Not Out is my quest to help my readers live the best versions of their lives, the happiest and healthiest versions. And I believe that to do that, we need to prevent illness and disease by strengthening our mind, body, and spirit to live a long life. And my belief stems from geroscience, from the science that backs this. So geroscience is a combination of the study of lifestyle illness and the study of aging. And they found that both share common mechanisms. So at one end of the spectrum, you've got people living to 100. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who get lifestyle illness at the age of 30. And I know you and I know these kind of people, right? People who have heart disease in their 30s, people who have hypertension in their 30s. In fact, today's headline was that 17% of children in Karnataka are pre-diabetic. If they don't change the way they eat, sleep, and exercise, or don't exercise, they're going to have diabetes in their 20s. So to go back to geroscience, the point they make is that both aging and these diseases share common mechanisms. If we can prevent these diseases, we can also prevent aging. And in centenarians, they've found people who live to 100 or more, they actually don't fall sick. They are very healthy and robustly so. They don't have any lifestyle illness. They don't even get coughs and colds very often. And it's largely because of the strength of their mind, body, and spirit. So this book is divided into those 3 sections, aforementioned sections, and there are 29 principles, as I call them, outlined across these 3 sections. And a strong mind, body, and spirit, again, isn't my idea, right? The WHO defines health as not just the absence of disease and infirmity, but also the presence of a strong physical, mental, social, and spiritual well-being, which is basically strong mind, body, and spirit. And we need to focus on this, both from a private health perspective, for the reason I just told you, and also from a public health perspective. Because India currently has an epidemic of diabetes, of hypertension, of heart disease. I don't know about depression, but I think the numbers are rising. We share 20% of the global burden of disease, but only 10% of the world's resources. Only 1% of our GDP is spent on public health infrastructure right now. So we really can't afford to be so sick, and yet we are. So the only thing that we can do is prevent these illnesses, and it is possible. That's the point my book is making, with tons of research, because while I've written this book in a year, thanks to JP sold it in 6 weeks, and we got it together in a year. I've been writing or thinking about it for the last 10 years, because I've been thinking and writing on health and prevention for the last 10 years. And lastly, I want to leave you with a quote from an American choreographer, who said that, getting older is like anything else. To make a success of it, you've got to start young. And, but again, how do we define youth, right? Even that's changing. So the WHO says 0 to 17 is childhood, 18 to 65 is adulthood, 66 to 79 is middle age, 80 to 99 is old age, and 100 and over are the long-lived elderly. So the goalposts are changing, and the reason they're changing is because Western medicine is bringing us there. But do we really want to get there with 3 lifestyle illnesses and in a walker, or do we want to get there, walking and robustly so, and happy and healthy? And that is entirely up to us. So this book is for anyone who can read, honestly, and is for everyone, regardless of how old they are, because our mind and body are exquisitely designed to respond to healthy stimuli. It doesn't matter if you start working healthfully on healthy goals at the age of 15, 20, 40, or 70. Your body will respond if you change the way that you live. And I hope that this book inspires people to do that.
So I'm going to take off from exactly what you said. So a large part of the first half of the book focuses on the mind, and we're always told about being mindful. But Sujata, in her book, refers to mindfulness and mindlessness. And I was completely fascinated by this theory of mindlessness. So tell us a little bit about being mindful, being mindless, and being self-aware, I think.
There's a chapter called Self-Aware and Mindful. And mindfulness, as defined, is being self-aware, knowing what's going on inside you and what's going on outside of you, right? And the Chinese letter for mindfulness is Tian, which is a combination of 2 characters, heart and mind, and now. So it's about having your heart and mind in the now. And mindlessness is really 2 things. One is what we're all engaging in a little too much with all the devices that we have, where we're trying to multitask our way through life, and that's mindlessness. But it's also about having stereotypes that we haven't examined. So I'll go into mindlessness once before I go into mindfulness, and I'm going to share 2 studies with you that illustrate both and the damage they can do if we're not careful. So when it comes to mindlessness, we have stereotypes about aging. And most of us have stereotypes that are not positive. So we assume that getting older means not being able to think as clearly, not remembering things, not being frailer, having fewer opportunities, being less popular, being wanted less. And then there are people with positive stereotypes about aging. And research has shown in a very large study in California that people who have positive stereotypes about aging live on an average 7 years more, with everything else being equal, right? So please examine the stereotypes that you have, not just about aging, but about the other things in your life, and see if they really hold true. And that is what mindlessness is, sort of carrying on an autopilot mode and not really reflecting on the stereotypes that we have, and of course, then there's the multitasking that we do with our devices. When it comes to mindfulness, there's a wonderful study by Ellen Langer, which is one of Jay's favorite studies. It's called the counterclockwise study. And in the counterclockwise study, Ellen Langer was one of the first, actually the first woman psychologist at Harvard. And she did this study in the 70s. She got a bunch of 17-year-old men. She recruited them from nursing homes. And she put them in two different scenarios. So one group were asked to spend a week enjoying themselves in a beautiful resort. And all they had to do was reminisce about what life was like when they were 50. That was all they had to do. I would love to be in a study like that.
Yeah,
And then there was the other group, which had a much harder time, Jay. They had to live in a home together, and they had to cook and clean for themselves as if they were in their 50s. So they were, some of these people, bear in mind, had come in wheelchairs. So they'd come in wheelchairs, but they were required by the study to now look after themselves. And they were also supposed to act as if they were in their 50s. So they were supposed to talk about what their life was like, the relationships that they had with their families, their marriages, their careers. They had to talk politics of the time, and they were given newspapers, magazines, videos from that time to help them really, experience that. The 2 weeks of the study passed, and then they looked at all of these study participants from both sets of the study participants, and they looked at their physical health, they looked at their emotional health, they looked at their mental health, and they found that both had done well, as would be expected. I mean, if you take a holiday also, you're going to generally be feeling better, right? I mean, compared to a nursing home, this place was heaven. And but the other group that had to live in that house together and live as if they were in their 50s, there was something miraculous about the results. Their physical strength improved, their eyesight improved, which is unusual. We never ever see a reversal. I don't know if you've ever experienced a reversal. Other than with yoga, I've heard of yoga helping you change your eyesight, the numbers. But their eyesight improved, their emotional health improved, their mental acuity improved. These people were actually feeling and looking also. They took photographs, they looked younger. So while the other group didn't look any younger, these people actually looked younger. It was like their minds tricked their bodies into believing that they were younger, and their bodies followed suit. So the point here is very simple, right? The old adage that if you use it, you don't lose it holds true for both the mind and the body. And this is a very powerful example of how being mindful of where your mind is or how you think impacts the way your body behaves.
So I listened to Dr. Atul Gawande speak, and we spoke about this at a reading, and he was talking about how, aging is something that he's considering very carefully. And he told this wonderful story about his mother in her 80s who didn't want to be moved into a home. And she kept resisting it, and he said, but it's safer for you, it's better for you, we must move you. She said, but I don't want to be surrounded by old people. So then he found her an old age home, or a home, right next to a university, which allowed all the people from the home to take courses. So he said she was so happy because she was doing a course on how the sari was worn in the 1950s or something like that. So somewhere, I guess, you need to be around.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, Sujata's book takes us through, a gamut of feelings and emotions, and I was very taken by one aspect she talks about. She talks about kindness and compassion. And, like you're always told, be kind to everyone, but I never knew the impact that kindness and compassion had on aging and longevity. So I would love to hear more about that.
Sure. I'm going to sort of, we've all heard about compassion, and we've all heard about being more compassionate, but I'd like to invite you to think about another aspect of compassion which we tend to ignore, and that's self-compassion. So self-compassion has three components. One is self-kindness. The other is which means being as kind to yourself as you would be to your best friend. It's very hard for most of us to practice, but that's an important piece of self-compassion. And the other is mindfulness, which we've just talked about. And then the third is understanding that we all share the same human condition. We're all connected, and we're also all experiencing similar experiences in our own microcosm, in our own world. And self-compassion, like compassion, has been found to be related to living a longer life, because you become better at, you are more conscientious if you're self-compassionate. You are able to manage your emotions better, which is a key part of living longer and living well. And the third thing that self-compassion does is that it helps you self-regulate better. So you know when to go to the doctor. I'm sure you have friends and family who keep pushing away that doctor's visit. And you must have friends as well who immediately respond, right? They see a symptom and they go and see a doctor and take care of it. So I invite you to cultivate both compassion and self-compassion. The beauty with compassion as well is that being compassionate and being kind helps the person who is being kind and being compassionate more than the person who's receiving it. When it comes to your mental health, certainly this is true. So it's a win-win situation, really, on both sides.
You know, the other thing that you talk about in the book quite extensively is altruism. And then you use the phrase reasonably altruistic. So tell me more.
So altruism is, doing things for others selflessly without any benefit. And doing it reasonably is basically making sure that you don't get depleted, whether it's giving giving money or giving your time. And when it comes to being reasonably altruistic, giving your time works better for you. Because writing a check is easier, and you involve less of yourself than when you give your time. And when people give their time, they tend to forget their own worries for that time that they are volunteering. When people give their time, they're getting off the couch, which makes them more active. It's hard to volunteer sitting and watching TV. And it also makes you more social, which is which is also really important for your overall well-being. And they found, again, that being reasonably altruistic serves you better, again, than the receiver when it comes to staving off symptoms of mental ill health. And there was a wonderful study done in Northern California where they found that the more people volunteered, and this was amongst the elderly, but the more the people volunteered, the longer they lived. While most of the research on this has been done in older people, there's no reason to believe that it wouldn't work for younger people as well. It would certainly improve their quality of life and keep them healthier.
Well, they do have programs in schools now to get you on the path of volunteering and, learning to be kind and, from the beginning. So again, the canvas is so big, I'm going to be jumping from one thing to another, but I couldn't possibly take you through this whole book. So the other thing that fascinated me, so a little aside here, I read most books as manuscripts and in bits and pieces. So for me, when it's out, I read it just like I would any other book. So I come to it as freshly as I would a book that you're reading. So it's always very fascinating. It's always like a journey that I've been through with the author. And I come away with bits and pieces that stick in my head and won't go away. So this one, which we again spoke about recently, is this whole aspect of forest bathing. So, I did try it. I told you I lay in a bed of buttercups with my daughter and my best friend. And we lay there for 2 hours, and I did feel a lot calmer. So what's it supposed to do?
So forest bathing is a term that the Japanese coined, and it's called they call it Shinrin-yoku. And in fact, the Japanese health ministry actually recommends it to its citizens. I think it's an incredibly evolved health ministry. Because there's plenty of research to show that spending time in nature is good for our health. In fact, doctors have come up with something for children called nature deficit disorder, where they're saying that this attention deficit that children are now showing increased incidence of, or having trouble with energy levels, has to do with the fact that they're not out in nature enough. I know my childhood was very different from my children in terms of my access to nature versus theirs. And in adults, they found that spending time in nature reduces the symptoms, not the incidence, but the symptoms of anxiety, depression, and heart disease. And it also, so it's very interesting, plants and trees release phytoncides, which are these chemicals, biochemicals, that actually have antifungal and anti-infective properties. And they are for their sakes, so to protect them from infection, they release these into the air. But what's wonderful about taking walks in nature is that we benefit from these immune boosting qualities that these plants sort of release into the air. So the reason the air smells so healthy to us is, I think, because we're biologically programmed to know that it's actually really, really good for us. So we inhale those molecules and our lungs get stronger, which I think is one of the miracles of nature. But
Maybe you should start a chapter in Bangalore. Do these Cubbon Park mornings for 2 hours. So again, in the book, you talk about, different things that I'm really sticking to the lifestyle changes and the mind in this part of it. So she talks about being social, about nurturing friendships, about spending time with family. And then, I thought, we'd end with my favorite part of the book. She talks about the magic of reading and what it does, and that feeds right into what I do for a living. So I'd love to hear from somebody who's not immersed so totally in the business as I am, why you think reading will help, the universe of us.
right. No, so I mean, we had to talk about reading. We had to talk about reading. But yes, so reading has been found to increase cognitive engagement, right? You read more, you make connections between what you read in the book and what's happening in the outside world, which is great for your mind. It's also fantastic for your social intelligence, because reading fiction, certainly not nonfiction, but reading fiction helps you with empathy. And they found this to be true in children, they found this to be true in adults. And if you have more empathy, you're able to make connections with human beings better. And being social is very important for staying alive. And the third thing, and I think this is certainly true for me, is that reading helps us find our passion. And that gets us to our purpose, which is really important for finding meaning in life. Because if you don't read, how will you know what you love? And if you don't find what you love, how will you know what you want to spend the rest of your life doing, ideally? Or certainly spending the time that you have to do hobbies pursuing. So I think for me, certainly, I ran a book club for many years. I love to read. I can't imagine my life without books. It's
So, I've lived in many cities, a few countries, and the way I've always begun my life in a new city is by finding a book club. The minute I find a book club, it's like I found my people, I found my life.
found your tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm going to move into one medical thing before we throw it open to questions, and I hope you have many. But I'm also very fascinated by how much Ayurveda there is in your book, and so, about how you believe that it can improve lives holistically. So tell me a little bit about your approach to Ayurveda.
Sure. So for me, Ayurveda is really a personal journey. I suffered maybe 3 years ago from a really protracted allergic sort of a reaction. We don't really know what it was to anymore, possibly dust or pigeon poop. Those are the two prevailing theories. But it got so bad that my lungs were completely sort of congested. And the allopathic doctor figured it out after giving me 3 rounds of antibiotics. And by then, my immune system probably had taken quite a beating. And then I went to the Ayurvedic doctor for the first time as a last resort. And he gave me, his various he gave me a series of instructions on what I was to eat and not to eat. And he also told me that a couple of tonics I had to take and the medicine I had to take. And he said, in 1 month, you'll be fine. I said, you mean till I get another attack? Because in Western medicine, we learn that allergies are, lifelong. Once you have them, you have them. And he said, no. And then you'll never have this again. I said, but that's not how allergies work. I mean, antigens are around in the environment, and once my body decides that it's something that it needs to to create an immune response to, it's going to fight it and it's going to create that immune response, and I'm going to have the sniffles and I'm going to have the symptoms. And he said, no, you won't. This is it, you're done. I said, literally, for 1 month I take these medicines and I'm done. He said, yes, you're done. We were traveling to the US. And my husband said, you're taking all these pills and potions with you. That's like half your suitcase. And I said, I have to do this. I really have to try this because I've suffered enough. And if it really works, then I'm going to be free forever. So for that month, I was vegetarian. I had to be really careful about my food because there are quite a few restrictions with Ayurveda. But it worked. So in Bangalore, which we all know as being the sort of allergy capital of the world, I haven't had a allergic reaction after that. I actually haven't had that many coughs and colds after that either, which is the added bonus. So I found that it works, and I've tried to really, it's a really tiny chapter on Ayurveda. There are books and books and books on Ayurveda, but the idea is to introduce you to it and to suggest to you gently that, try it out. Go to a doctor that is recommended by a few friends, because there's like with allopaths, there are, all kinds of allopaths, and just like that, there are all kinds of Ayurveds, but we have the luxury of having some amazing Ayurvedic doctors in this city, and go to them, because I have stopped going to an allopath, and I'm a scientist trained in Western medicine, and I have completely switched to allopathy. I'm not such a believer in homeopathy because I have I can't wrap my scientific brain around it. But Ayurveda makes sense to me. It has its own language, so you can't understand it from the Western lens, but it has its own language, it has its own logic, it has its own intuition. And just like with Western medicine, a good Ayurvedic doctor is a healer. And they also do, the Nadi Pariksha, which is, again, fascinating, where they can tell what's going on with your health by examining your pulse.
Yes.
Again, fascinating. We don't understand it from a Western medical perspective, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It works. The only problem for us is that we can't research it the same way, because they speak another language. When you try to translate Ayurveda into Western medical language, we lose the essence of it in many ways, and the results are not what we hope for. So. And the trials are also not as robust, to be honest. They could be better designed. So we could come up with a kind of, and be more rigorous, and we need more money in it. The NIH budget, the National Institute of Health's budget, annual budget, equals our country's public health spend on public health infrastructure. So the amount of money that is spent on Western medical research, and the NIH is where all patents come from, 80% of drugs in the market are because of NIH research. So in India, we don't have the kind of funds, which is why we don't have solid research on Ayurveda, but we have enough empirical evidence. Sadly, the Brits made a lot of effort to dismantle our systems, and therefore it doesn't get the respect that it deserves today. But that doesn't mean we don't have good doctors, and we certainly, in the south, we also have access to great medicine, because Kerala is home to a lot of the amazing remedies. So we have great medicine available, we have great doctors available, highly recommended.
Like I said, fluffy blue cover, but all science. So we'd love to, have questions from the audience, because, I'm sure everybody has something to ask Sujata. So over to you.
Hello.
Sure, Dr. Gangadharan. He runs the Ayush Medical Center at MS Ramaiah Hospital. He comes from a tradition of doctors. So his mother was an incredible doctor. His brother is also a superb onco Ayurveda, and he's an amazing Ayurveda as well.
You have some reservations about homeopathy.
Yes.
I would like to know that. What is the thing? Because...
No, but they're my personal reservations. If it works for you, I don't want to have a conversation about it.
I'm not, basically I'm following the allopathic system.
Yes.
There has been a lot of pressure from the family to switch over to homeopathy. I've not yet gone whole hog on that, but I just wanted to understand what is your thinking about the homeopathic.
I don't think I want to tell you.
I mean, like,
Because I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because there's something called the placebo effect. It's very powerful and very strong. You have to believe in the form of therapy that you undertake. It's very important. Your mind needs to be aligned with whatever it is that you are subjecting your body to. So I'm not going to color your opinion, particularly when I already have inadvertently. I have my own ideas of why I believe what I do, and that has to do with the physics of it. But there's a lot we don't know. That's the important thing. This is my ego talking. There's a lot we don't know. And the reason, I'll share with you the reason, but I'll also tell you what physicists have told me. So the reason that I have a problem with it is because there aren't any molecules of the drug left. However, now they're finding, I've spoken to a physicist who's told me that now they're finding that water has memory. So water molecules can actually start to behave like the drug that they put into, that they dilute. That is a dilution system that homeopathy uses. And they have this something called susection or something where they basically shake the liquid. And the logic is that the water molecules actually absorb, they get an imprint of the drug in question, so that in fact you are getting the drug. And my limited point is that there is no traceable drug in the medicine that you're given. However, physicists are saying now that the water molecules can get the structure embedded in them. So we don't know. The answer is we don't know. But because I don't believe that it works, I don't take it because I know there's a chance it won't work on me, because I have such a strong belief.
so it's a matter of faith.
No,
To an
faith plays a role. It's not the only thing that matters, but faith also plays a role. And for me, Ayurveda works beautifully, so I'm happy to have found my, and it has no side effects. And the only thing about Ayurveda that is superior to homeopathy is it actually increases your wellness threshold so that you don't have that illness again. Homeopathy doesn't guarantee that. Ayurveda can actually help you get there.
But people who have taken Ayurvedic treatment say it's a very tough process.
I think it's about your perspective.
I mean, it's a matter of opinion again, as you.
Yes.
But they say it is tougher than allopathy or homeopathy.
No, but that's because our notion of disease is a little. The thing is, our body and mind are exquisitely designed to keep the balance no matter what, for as long as they can. So it takes at least 6 months to get an illness. And Ayurveda's point is, give us at least 2 months before you recover. For 2 months, do what is good for your mind and body to fix the problem that you have created. Allopathy has given us a mistaken assumption that taking a pill and going off to work is going to solve the problem. It really isn't. It's a mind, body, spirit thing that you need to address by taking a pause and making some changes. But if you do make those changes for just those 2 months, you're never going, at least that's been my experience, you literally will never have to deal with that disease again. So I don't see it as a problem. I see those 2 months, yes, it's kind of rigorous. You can't eat this, you can't eat that. You need to sleep at a certain time. But, it works, so.
Okay, thank you.
Sujata, the question is that today cancer is becoming very rampant, and in certain countries it's actually #1 killer beyond even heart disease. Yeah. Now that of course vitiates your line living well and living long, because cancer is almost like a death sentence in many, many cases. Do you have a suggestion on how to prevent it so that you can still continue to live well and live long?
I do believe that it's about strengthening your mind, body, and spirit. So, cancer actually follows, cancer is a perfect example of how, what you do with your life. So your behavioral experience with the environment, how you're interacting with the environment, how you're working, how you're playing, how you're spending time with your family and friends, how you're sleeping, how you're eating, how you're exercising or not, can all play a role in the creation of a disease, because cancer takes a while to be created. So in a beautifully functioning organism, a human being, your cells are actually are able, all of our cells have the ability to commit cell suicide. And they commit cell suicide the moment they are not functioning the way that they should. It's a protective mechanism to protect the whole being. So the individual commits suicide to protect the whole being. And precancerous cells in a healthy person will commit self-suicide. In fact, it's happening within all of us as we speak. Cancers are appearing and disappearing as we speak within our bodies. The reason that cancer appears in some people and not in others is because that mechanism gets overridden. And it gets overridden because we forget that our bodies need rest, our minds need rest. There is only a certain amount of stress our minds and bodies are supposed to handle. The physical environment around us is deeply polluted. We are polluting, our visual stimuli is polluted. We're listening to too much noise. There are many things that are outside of our control that stress our minds and bodies out. So what we need to do is take better care than our forefathers did of our mind, body, and spirit. So that's what this book is about, really. It's about seriously looking at how we're living and making the choices that may seem uncomfortable, as the gentleman was telling me about Ayurveda. You know, this is hard. Yes, it may seem hard, but you're actually preventing illness and more complicated illness in the future if you sort of look after yourself a little better now. And the external environment doesn't help us. You know, we lead these fast-paced lives. We are into fast thinking, multitasking. It's really not good for our brains. Our brains were designed for sequential thinking. That's how our brain works. Our brain is a beautiful example of how we should live, because our brain doesn't store anything. It doesn't even store energy. It takes what it needs. It merely experiences. So the way we're leading modern life is actually causing cancer in many ways. And why are we seeing it more? Because as the populations age, the mechanisms that protect us, the apoptotic mechanisms, stop working, because our chromosomes have these protective caps called telomeres, and they start to slough off. And they slough off as we age in each of our cells, because our cells are dividing, right? So over time, they're aging, and the telomeres start to slough off. Guess what increases the rate of telomeres sloughing off? The caps on our chromosomes, which keep our DNA healthy. The reason that they start to slough off faster is because of stress. So stress precipitates aging. And if you notice, many of the people we know who get cancer are also people who have tended to either become stressed more because of the work around, or life around them, or they've just had more stressful lives. And of course, as they age, it could be a natural phenomenon.
Thank you very much. Wonderful answer. Only one light question, which is really that we have very little control on many of the variables which are in the environment and things like that. Any suggestion on how to keep off from all the pollution and dangerous things? Have you mentioned it in your book?
No, but there are 29 principles that you can adopt. So while you should, air purifier is very easy to get in your house, and I would recommend one of those industrial air purifiers, not one of those chotu-motu things that you get on Amazon, because that's what we have. We have these lab air purifiers in each of our rooms. So at least we sleep breathing clean air at night. I have 2 young children at home, so I have to think about their developing lungs. But honestly, all of these things you can apply anywhere.
It's interesting you mention air purifiers, because, I've been working on air pollution and how bad it is for you as you age. And I've been wondering about just that, as to whether I should buy, even if it's one that you get on Amazon. You see, now we had the same idea about water, that plastic bottle had pure water. What I find now about technology is that we adopt it, and there's a huge, it's considered a big plus to adopt technology fast. But actually, in time, we realize that the technology probably has more minuses than pluses.
Absolutely.
So, just like water, you know, like my Vaidyan, I'm totally on Ayurveda now. So my Vaidyan says that you must drink fresh water. So even when he's traveling, he carries his own bottle of water only for 24 hours. You know, because the water is no longer,
Yeah, it needs to have life force.
yeah. So similarly with air, you know, I'm wondering if we're making the same mistake. You know, that today we're saying, hey, you know, this purifies the air. Just like that plastic bottle supposedly purified the water. But you know, water and air are fundamental to life. And there are many things we don't understand about the air. So, you know, I'm just thinking, are there other ways in which you can naturally clean the
Oh,
air?
absolutely. I mean, we really need to
You know?
reduce our carbon emission. We need to
Yeah.
have more plants. I mean,
No, so
deforestation,
I'm-
afforestation.
Yeah, all that, you see. But in
Yes.
fact, I was thinking whether we can have like now hardly any place left now for trees. Can it be on the streets?
Right.
You know, so
No. I mean, air purifiers are a very selfish sort of a solution for the house because we can't impact what's happening around us. But ideally, the air we breathe needs to be clean. I mean,
no,
that's
what
a
I'm trying to
basic
say is it
fundamental
may
right.
not, you may think it's a selfish solution, but actually you may be harming yourself for all you know.
That I'm not so convinced just because I know what's in the air otherwise, right? So eliminating that becomes very important. And I know I need to eliminate that.
But what else are you eliminating?
The pollutants, the pollutants that are in the air.
No, but you may be, you know, what I'm trying to say is like I walked into, now because I'm so conscious about this air.
Right.
I walked into this room and the air is not good. You know? Now, if an air purifier has to work, you have to be in a sort of shut-off environment.
Right.
Yeah, whether it's a larger industrial type thing, you're anyway closing it off. How much does circulation of air, you know, like fresh water, you're saying is life force, is there some kind
My
of
air
life force?
purifiers are not on all the time. They're just on for an hour. And then but we use the AC anyway. So anyway, everything is shut off.
Shut off. You see, so this
So,
is my
yeah.
whole problem of, you know, I've been seriously considering it because of all the pollutants.
Yes,
But is that the solution?
sure. We can talk about this later if you like.
Hi. Do you
Hello.
have an opinion about the latest fad doing the rounds, which is intermittent fasting?
Oh, I have a chapter on it in my book.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
So there is
what's your
research.
opinion?
There is research to show that fasting is beneficial. Fasting is anti-aging, and 14 to 16-hour fasts are good for you.
Okay.
Yeah, she used the word fad, but it's actually not a fad, right? So fasting has been part of all of our cultures. No, but I'm going back to his point, that it's not really a fad. Fasting has been part of our cultures, and fasting, I think now when we fast in India, there are all these options, but I don't think our forefathers were pigging out on sabudana khichdi and whatnot. So I think there was discipline and really using that time to go inwards was the point of those fasts, and that's sort of the point of intermittent fasting as well.
I'm looking at the title of your talk rather than the name of your book.
Yes.
Looking at the subtitle, Living Well, Living Long. I think I'd go along 100% with living well. I'm not so sure if I'd go along with living long. Because, you know, sitting in this room, the majority are over 60 probably.
Sure.
You've been talking about, incidentally just now, carbon footprint, etc. If 20% of the population lived to be 90, leave alone 99, it would be disastrous for the planet. I think, for example, celebrating getting to be 60, this tradition of Shashti Purti and all those things, meant that perhaps you've been talking about how our ancestors probably understood through concepts like Ayurveda, how living harmoniously with nature was as important as living well with ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
There's no
isn't
question
trying
about it.
to live long, inherently too long perhaps, I won't define what too is, inherently bad, dangerous?
You know,
for
my
the-
book
for the
is
world
really,
as-
yes.
As
No,
well as for ourselves.
you know, my book is about adding life to your years as well as adding years to
Yeah,
your
but
life.
I'm just saying that maybe the emphasis should be on living well rather than a guide to longevity.
The idea is to get people to live well. And living long is the hook. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Living long is the hook because most people want to live long. No, they do. I mean, I think that was the reason we said that. That's my point. That is my point. I mean, the idea is to convince people to live well. Yes. 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 Sure.
Brave New World and Aldous Huxley, where the guy wants to live indefinitely. I'm sure that we wouldn't become apes as a result of that. But, this has been known for a long time.
But my book is actually about adding more, making your life richer and healthier. Because quite frankly, we don't know how much time we have on this earth, right? But we do know, Ayurveda says that each baby born has the ability to live 100 years. That's what our oldest medical discipline tells us. So that's the point, that we actually have the capacity to lead healthy, long lives. It's really entirely up to us. It's about taking responsibility. That's what my book is about. It's about taking personal responsibility for your own health and for your own life.
Designed up to 100 years only, whatever you do.
That's what Ayurveda says. Every baby born has the ability to live 100 years.
Hi. I'd like to understand your views on the karmic theory of cause and effect.
Karmic theory of causal effect.
Cause and effect, yes.
So we're going into spirituality now.
Not really. And how it has an impact on living well, living long, and the quality of life.
I don't feel like I'm equipped to answer that question. I do follow the Gita. I'm a student of the Gita. And I do believe in the karmic cycle. I believe in a prarabdha. But again, I think, and one of the things that Krishna asks us to do is look after our physical health, our physical bodies and minds, because they're not even ours. They're his gift, right? So it actually follows what the scriptures tell us.
Ma'am, this came from something I read where Western medicine talks about a third factor called luck, which in fact translates to karma as one of the cause for cancer, the prevalence of cancer.
Possibly, but again, there's a lot that you can do to prevent ill health, is my point. You know, let's not get into that. Let's not make that, let's not sit back and say, "Arey, this was my destiny." Let's work as hard as we can to look after ourselves, because there's a lot we can do. So to respond to that, when it comes to heart disease, there was a study that they did in over 20 countries with over 15,000 subjects, okay? So, I mean, it's a solid study. They found that 99% of the risk of getting heart disease is attributable to lifestyle. 99% of the risk. So let's say 1% of us are destined for it amongst those of us who are going to get it, but 99% of us are not. That's a lot, no? So maybe, I'm not saying karma doesn't play a role, but a tiny role compared to the abundance of disease that we're seeing around us.
Right, thank you.
Hi, Sujata.
Hello.
Sujata, we've always been raised. She can hear me. We were always told that we should eat our breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks every 2 hours. Now, I'm going back to her point of intermittent fasting, where people are not eating after a certain time at night, and they're not eating until 12 o'clock. How does that really impact our body? I'm sorry I've not read that chapter. Could you just give a little brief?
It actually seems to work really well for us. So, you know, the logic is the following, that during hunter, food gatherer times, there were periods of feast and there were periods of famine. So the bodies were created so that during periods of feast, we built ourselves internally, and during the times of famine, which is when we were fasting without wanting to, our bodies cleared the debris. So the junk was cleared, the cellular debris was cleared out, the apoptotic cells were cleared out when we fasted. And the fasting obviously was not voluntary at that time, but it worked, right? It kept us internally cleansed. Now that is not happening. Now we have food literally at our beck and call. And we have these absurd ideas about eating every 2 hours, which is actually really not good for us because our body needs that sort of rest, right? It's a time of you can't constantly be in a state of building. And perhaps that works if you're a bodybuilder, and I don't know enough about the science relating to creating muscle and creating muscle quickly. But certainly for the average person, it's not such a great idea. You need that rest. Your body and your gut needs that rest between meals. So it seems to, the studies are fairly unequivocal, and I take a lot of, I feel like we have cultural cues on this. Every religion talks about fasting. I think there is something to that. We've historically been doing this. It's a practice that has spanned millennia. So we've obviously known that it's good for us.
No, I agree with you with fasting once a week, twice a week, whenever, but this very long 12, 14, 15-hour fasting is something even I was a little bit...
It seems hard to us, I think, because of the way that we are, socially sort of, how we've grown up culturally. It's really not that hard. So my husband does it 7 days a week now. But he eats a very a protein-heavy dinner. But that's his natural inclination. It's on the way I eat, it's the way he eats, so he can do it. For me, I'm a light eater, so I'm hungry in the morning. So I can't do it. But yeah, it works for him.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a question about all those Ayurvedic lehas that you take. Do you get them tested? And if so, at a lab first? Because I've heard many people say that when they have tested things, they have steroids in them, even when they come from seemingly reputed places.
Right.
So that's one question. And the other is, I think there is a significant difference between heart disease and cancer. I think heart disease, yes, there are lifestyle determinants, but with cancer there are so many more unknown variables, and it really seems to be the whim of the cell at some point. So this factor of luck that an earlier question alluded to.
I didn't discount that. I said, but that's only in 1% of the cases, perhaps.
Right, and I'm not saying we should use that as a justification, oh, we're going to go anyway, it's just a matter of luck, so let's not do anything about it. But I do think there is a significant difference between the two.
No, of course, but there's also commonalities, right? So cancer, unfortunately, keeps changing its masks, making it very difficult to treat. Heart disease doesn't do that. It's a fairly straightforward illness. It's also a physical illness. But in both cases, your immune system stops being able to do what it was able to do earlier. Cancer is 1,000 times more challenging to treat. And I don't know what the numbers are in terms of risk avoidance, right? But I think for the majority of us, we could certainly work at living better. And I wouldn't want anyone to be deterred from that goal, so.
And getting the Ayurvedic medicines tested?
Yes. So haven't done that because I have full faith in Dr. Gangadharan, or Gigi as we fondly call him. He has training in both Western and Ayurvedic medicine. And the first time I met him, I asked him this question. He said, you have nothing to worry about as far as the drugs that you get from this hospital. And I've trusted him. So I haven't gotten them tested. I have never been to any other doctor. I've never gone and gotten any other medicines. I don't take medicines from anywhere else. I only get them from his dispensary. And you're right, that would be the logical way to go about it, to test them. But I haven't done that. Absolutely, music is so important.
Hi, Sujata. You spoke about empathy, and that's important for living a long life. Would you extend that empathy to animals also, and therefore say that living a vegetarian lifestyle would also contribute to a long life?
Absolutely.
Because both from the food standpoint, health, and also because you're extending your empathy to all living beings, not just humans.
Sure.
So your conscience.
Sure, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I have a chapter called Flexitarianism, where I'm really nudging the reader to eat less non-veg. So my point, flexitarianism is really just being vegetarian most of the time and eating non-veg maybe once or twice a week. And my hope is that will eventually lead to us all being vegetarian, because I'm a vegetarian, and I'm a vegetarian for the non-violent reasons, as well as the fact that it's actually really good for your health, because it's an anti-inflammatory diet. And yes, you need to be careful about a few supplements. When you are vegetarian, vitamin B12, iron, calcium, vitamin D can be an issue, but as long as you make sure that you're replete in those, I fully agree with you. Much better way to eat.
Hi, Sujata.
Hello.
Question. Does living long take the fun out of living? The reason I ask is always a tub of ice cream that needs my attention. So
why not? Then you should eat some.
does
Just don't eat too
does
much.
the book tell you how to balance having fun and living long?
I sure had a chapter on moderation. You should have. Next book. Jay's always egging us on to write the next book, but yeah. No. Just ask the question.
Sorry. Yeah, so I've been waiting to ask a question, and my question is primarily, what's your opinion about the obesity epidemic that you see around? Having said that, the discussion that we had, till this point, I want to comment on two points, because I think it's important to know. One was about living long and, the sort of perils for that, or I don't know what to take from there. But I think if you have a strong purpose, if you have a good health, living long should become fun. And of course, you should have money, because otherwise you run out of money, you will not have fun. So that's one. But if you have a strong purpose, that can actually trigger you to drive you to live long.
We have a chapter called on meaning.
Yeah.
And one of the things that brings your life meaning is purpose. So yes, very important.
And you could have a purpose which was not there for the first 30 years of your life. I mean, it can be post-retirement. I've seen people who have gone into a new purpose as a second career after retirement and thriving, And in fact, they are living their life now than what they lived previously. The other point is on the cancer part of it in terms of luck and all that. I'm a functional health researcher, so I come across many cases and all that, and some of the studies that you were mentioning, some of that I have to also, I've heard in bits and pieces. Now, there have been cases recorded, and many such cases, where a pure plant-based whole food diet for a cancer patient could take it to what you call remission. That means remission means no sign of cancer.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
To the plant lover.
Yeah. And there are many cases. There have been cases recorded where the patient did not go back for chemo.
Sure.
And just went on for a plant-based whole food diet for 3 months, and there was no traces found.
Sure.
After that. Sure. So if it can cure, I mean, of all things, obviously it can prevent. I mean, that's my logic. So I would suggest in this hall that lifestyle changes mean a lot. And they can really take you to a very optimistic level of thinking.
Absolutely.
So these are 2 bits of my
Sure.
comment on that. But I wanted to ask you about the obesity epidemic. What's your opinion about it?
It's very worrying. I
Yeah.
mean, it's incredibly worrying. It's depressing, particularly because we've got children that are obese. I mean, we were just discussing the statistic about 17% of Karnataka's children being pre-diabetic. And unfortunately, obesity is linked with every imaginable lifestyle disease. And the solutions are fairly straightforward, right? Being more active, eating better, cutting out processed food, sleeping better. But it needs to happen, and I think it needs to be I really think that our Prime Minister needs to make this a mission, just like he has made Swachh Bharat a mission. And he recently unveiled the Fit India program, but I don't know how much rigor he's going to put into that, how much time he's going to give it, because he should. If he's concerned about our country's future, he really needs to put this on a very serious platform, because otherwise we're already in the situation where we have epidemic levels of lifestyle illness, and it's only going to get worse. If children are going to start to get pre-diabetic, then you're going to have young people in their 20s with diabetes, and as you know, unfortunately, they're all bedfellows, right? Diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, they all sort of happen together. So it's very worrying, very, very worrying.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Taking a bit further to this plant-based diet thing, so should GM-modified crops be avoided? Because now organic is the new mantra. Right? And also dairy. I mean, now a lot of people say that one should avoid dairy because of the steroids and hormones that are pumped into the cows, and which we then drink.
I think we should all have a cow in our backyard.
So should one avoid dairy now? And is veganism the way to go? Because a lot of people say that is the, they take it further to vegetarianism and say that's the real thing to do now.
I mean, Ayurveda says that, don't drink milk after you're past a certain childhood age. But it's also the way that a lot of people get their nutrients. So in a country like ours, we can't talk about being gluten-free. We can't talk about going off milk, because for many of us, those are our sources of nutrients. Mm-hmm. But I think you should individually see what suits you. So if it suits your body and mind to not drink milk, then take it out of your diet.
But isn't the large percentage of population anyways lactose intolerant without realizing the fact?
Yeah, they are. In India, they are. But now they're saying it may not be lactose intolerance necessarily, but it may be intolerance to non-A2 milk, because traditionally we drank milk from the humpbacked cow, and now we're drinking milk from these Jersey cows. So the jury is kind of still out. So see if A2 milk suits you better. Oh, A2 milk is available. A2 milk is available. Akshay Patra has A2 milk. I mean, not Akshay Kalpa, sorry, has A2 milk. And then I think there are specialized dairies that are, if you just type it on Google, you'll find a few dairy farms in the city that will deliver it to you. Premium, obviously. But Akshay Kalpa is not too bad, I think, cost-wise.
First of all, I want to congratulate you for writing a good book like this.
Thank you.
I have 2 points to make.
Yes.
One, you mentioned 2 important points, compassion and kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Can we add one more word to that?
Please.
Reason. Everything that happens has a reason.
Oh, everything that happens has
Everything. So I would like to add one more word, compassion, kindness, reason. how many of us do you think are we going into the reason why it is happening to me? That is not happening. Okay. Second thing is, when I read in the newspaper about a week ago about this program, a very interesting commercial question came to my mind. Why the title is 99 not out? Why not 100? Why I ask this question is, wait. There's a commercial attitude going on around the world now. You go to a shop, the price is 99, 109, 299. Why that psychology, a commercial psychology, entering into our every aspect of life? Is it that kind of thing? No. As a writer, how do you analyze it?
No, I'm going to answer that for Sujata. The 100 Not Out was already taken as a title. So it was a purely practical, title that we chose.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Hi. So I wanted to know, there's an Indian proverb that, it says that if you eat one time, you're a yogi. If you eat 2 times, you're a bogi. If you eat 3 times, you're a rogi. So it's there in an ancient text. So what do you suggest? What's your opinion about this? Have you done any research or something?
So the Japanese say eat till you're 2/3 full, and that's the point, right? Just eat less than you normally do, because you're probably eating more to begin with. And don't eat with your eyes, but eat with your stomach. So your stomach starts to give you signals when it's full. So listen to your stomach. Yeah. Yep, eat slow. Then you get the stomach signals in time. Yep.
Hi, Sujata.
I think this would be the last question.
Hello.
Hi. Just one question. Everyone's been talking about the air we breathe, the food we eat when it comes to living well. What about the clothes we wear?
This would come from the owner of Angari Silks, but of course, I don't know actually. I'm not saying it's not important, I just haven't thought about it.
Just a thought, which has to be because everyone's been talking about wearing handloom and wearing organic cotton.
Sure.
And not wearing synthetics. It's a matter of exactly like what they say about, it's the same thing as packaged food and growing your food in your backyard. Something similar. So if we can put creams on our face, on our hands, and can have an impact on our body, so do clothes.
That makes perfect sense, actually, when you say it like that.
So how come, that's one aspect of living well, which has been kind of skipped in this whole conversation in general. So I just wanted to know your thought.
And your skin is your, a really important organ.
Yes.
And we tend to disregard it in that sense.
And
You're
it
right.
requires to breathe and...
Sure.
So that's my thought, but if there's something
No,
that
so
you would have
Ayurveda
learned.
actually has recommendations, right, in terms of seasons, what to wear, and it's always loose-fitting cotton clothing. That's a big sort of and it's interesting that you say that. I haven't looked at any research on it, actually. Very interesting question. Thank you. Well, we start to age when we are born. It's the nature of the living condition. There's nothing good or bad about it. It just is. You start to age the moment you're born.
I think that was the last question. Thanks so much for everybody for coming here. Do we have time for one more? Okay, one more.
Congratulations, Sujata, on your book.
Thank you.
It's 99 not out. My granddad was 99 out.
Oh.
So
sorry to you.
It's a coincidence for me. Well, the question I wanted to ask is about, there are so many Western diets, saying the paleo diets and all that, they totally want to cut off this carbohydrate and increase your fat intake. They say that suits the diabetic patients. What's your thoughts on this?
I'm not a dietitian, but I remember my professor was a gastroenterologist, and I think we have to take this in a cultural context as well, would be my top of the head answer. and look at the research. I haven't really looked at the research in the context of diabetes. But generally speaking, cutting out the carbs would help keep your insulin levels, and increasing your protein would help with managing your insulin levels. That makes scientific sense.
On that note, thank you so much, everybody, for coming out on a Wednesday evening. There are books available for sale. Please have Sujata sign a ton. Thank you so much.